So I've been reorganizing my makerspace and I wanted to put my logo for my channel onto the wall behind me. Short of buying a crappy $10 frame or sticking it directly onto the wall, I thought, why not make my own frame? And while I'm at it, I can make it something interesting and relevant to my makerspace. So today we're going to design and 3D print our own custom photo frame for a photo just like this one. Sup guys, you're with Pete. Welcome to Pete's Makerspace. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what size frame I want to print. This isn't always as simple as how big is my photo, as I'll have to take into account some considerations like the build volume of my 3D printer, or even how big is the space on my wall. But I'll start by jotting down at least these dimensions: the length and width of my photo, the maximum X and Y build volume of my 3D printer, and an approximate border width, which I think would suit my picture. From here, I'll head into Fusion 360. And if you haven't used this program yet, I can highly recommend it. It's free from Autodesk for non-commercial use, and it's extremely powerful if you become familiar with it. I'll create a new sketch on the top plane and start with a rectangle using the dimensions of the photo I measured. From there, I can use the offset tool to copy the aspect ratio of the rectangle and create an enlarged rectangle with the width of the frame I guesstimated. I'm going to use about 30 millimeters. I'll label this sketch measurement reference, as it'll serve as a guide for the measured photo dimensions. Now it's time to have a think about what kind of creative flair I'm going to add. I'll do this by seeking out a circuit board pattern, I think, which I'll emboss or extrude from the surface of the frame, giving it an electronic or techie kind of effect. In order to use this pattern in Fusion 360, I'll need to find a file in an SVG format, or scalable vector graphic. So simple keywords in Google Images like a vector or SVG, along with a filter for black and white photos, should get me most of the way there. I'm going to keep my image simple because my 3D printer has to extrude this pattern out of plastic, so the capabilities of the Slicer software and my printer's hot end nozzle are going to come into play here. Jumping back into Fusion 360, I'll create another sketch, again on the top plane, and I'll use the Insert SVG feature to overlay my pattern. I'll scale and position it as closely as I can to the measurement reference. I'll need to unfix the lines that were imported from the SVG so that I can move them around. The image I downloaded is already remotely frame shaped, but it's still not exactly suited to my photo's dimensions, so I'll have to make some adjustments. Enabling the measurement reference I created earlier gives me a guideline to tweak my pattern to suit the frame outline. Next, I'll need to create an inner and outer edge of the frame border. I'm going to take advantage of the natural contours in the pattern I've selected and give my frame a custom, cool kind of circuit boardy feel. I'm just using the basic line and shape sketch tools to create the frame outlines. I really took my time on this step as I'll have to look at this photo frame on my wall, so I should make sure I like it. I'm also making sure I check in with the measurement reference so the final design complies with the dimensions of the photo that we measured earlier. I'll extrude the frame to a depth of about 5 millimeters. This may not sound very deep, but I'm going to add a back plate later, so the combined depth should look pretty reasonable once it's assembled. I'll also extrude the frame pattern. Here I'm hiding the frame body, so I can cleanly select the profiles of the pattern, and then I'll extrude them from the surface of the frame by a distance of about 2 millimeters. The join operation leaves me with a single body. It's starting to look pretty good, but I think I'll finish it with a little chamfering around the edges for that super cool tech feel. Nice. Now I'll need to create a bit of a well for the photo to sit in so that the frame overlaps the edges of the photo nicely. Creating a sketch on the back plane of the extruded frame and offsetting a rectangle 10mm from the innermost edge should do it. I'll extrude this as a new body because I'm going to print it separately and glue it later. It's about here we should talk about printer tolerances and joining multiple parts together. I like to create a user parameter for what I've calculated to be my printer's tolerance. That way, if I need to change it, I can change it in one place and all of the parametric sketches will all update to reflect my new value. When I create a backplate to sit in the well, I want to make sure it fits in place nicely, so I'll need to accommodate for the small, real-world imperfections of 3D printing by offsetting the dimensions of the backplate by my printer's tolerance value. This backplate doesn't need to be super thick, just thick enough to hold the photo in place. It's about time we got to printing. My printer has a maximum build volume of about 180mm squared, so before I can do that, I'll need to slice up the parts into manageable sized chunks. Then I can print them separately and glue them back together later. I'll use my printer's tolerance value as a separator to ensure the parts fit snugly together after printing. I'm also overlapping the joins on the front and back parts to ensure I get the maximum strength after gluing. The final touch will be to add a hook or a mounting point. As usual, I have to take into account that this will be printed, so a simple chamfer at 45 degrees can make features like overhangs and bridges easier to print. Okay, let's get this thing on the printer. These parts are looking good. The spray with some isopropyl alcohol and some elbow grease takes care of the adhesive I used to keep the parts on the print bed. While the rest of the parts are printing, I'll have a think about how this photo is going to look up against other frames in the room. All of my other photos have glass in front of them, so they give off reflections. I've printed this photo on boring old high-resolution plain paper with no gloss. I could go and buy some cheap glass and then cut it to size, but I've got some transparency paper lying around, so I'm going to use that instead. Hashtag easy. Right, let's get gluing. Here's where chopping up the frame into overlapping sections really pays off in both assembly and final strength. I'll give the photo and transparency paper a little trim to fit into the well of the frame and give it a fly. There's only one thing left to do. Fantastic. So there you have it, custom designed photo frame that matches not only my photo, but my makerspace. I'm pretty happy with it, but if I was to do it again, I'd make some design changes. That's the best part about being a maker. We learn and we iterate our designs through our successes and our failures. If you've got any suggestions on how we could improve this frame, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And I might even do a version 2.0 video later in the year. If you want to download this frame as it is, check out the links in the description where you can download it from Thingiverse for free and 3D print it yourself. Thanks for watching. I hope you've gained some inspiration for your own projects. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more of Pete's Makerspace, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, committed, and creative. This is Pete from Pete's Makerspace, out.